Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. I am very excited for this one because we're going to be going deep into some interesting thoughts. Now, while I'm excited, you should be too. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails when we go live, which is, of course, Fridays for The Collective, Wednesdays for The Gold Mine. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or anything else, put them up in the comment section. We can hit those throughout the show, kind of like these ones right here. Dan C., good morning, gentlemen. There are asses to be kicked today. One of them is mine. As I got one too, so I'm going to get that kicked. Daniel Levante, afternoon, gents. Glenn Tagulo comes in. Morning, fellas. Good to see. I just talked to Glenn the other day. We got a good catch-up phone call. Great to chat with him. And then we got people joining on the Instagram side. Loving it already. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you are signed up for the newsletter. It is the reinforcement loop. It comes out every week. Gives you all kinds of great information, a little bit of brain candy to play with and enjoy. Other than that, let's dive in. Clay, why don't you hit us up? Quick little intro, even though we all know you're a friend of the show, but still, hit us up and then we go on from there. I think I lost him. Perfect timing. All right, we'll come back to him. Sean, how's life out in the mountains? You're muted there, Sean.
What is even going on today?
Right?
I got a question for you right off the hop.
Hit it.
So when we went live, the little on-air light next to your left elbow went on just momentarily, but then it flashed off. What the heck? Are we on or are we off?
We are
we on air?
We are on air.
Can we have an on-air sign?
I have a button, so I can press it on, off.
Oh, so there's not like
off.
leave it on all the time?
No. Unfortunately.
Could you have spent the extra $3 for the button version?
I could have, but my wife and kids got it for me, so.
Oh, well, okay.
This is,
Fair
I'm doing what I got with it.
Yeah,
I need to get a soldering iron and
Check.
set it up
okay,
there.
Okay.
But,
Gotcha. Okay, that was my only thought today was, can we be on the air?
Yeah, no, we are on air all the time. Clay's jumping in and out. I think he's losing some signal here, but
maybe you should just press that little button every time
Claire. Maybe, yeah.
Every time
he's
Clay
back.
comes visible.
Now he's gone. Now he's back. Now he's gone. I love it. On the Instagram site, Ethan Ayers Project says you are definitely on, and we are on for sure. We're going to get into some very interesting topics here that I wanted to play with, and I'm hoping Clay can get back in here and sort this out. But the topic of the day, to be or not to be, that is the question. This got started. Friend Chris Williams, he got sent a clip online that was talking about Napoleon's quote of, "A man will do most anything for a piece of cloth or a little metal," or things like that. And I started thinking about this whole process of like, what will we give everything for? Because sometimes it's a medal, sometimes it's a flag, sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a job, sometimes it's whatever. But
sometimes it's ourselves.
Sometimes it's ourselves. But let's get into it, Sean. What do you think?
Well, so, obviously the quote, well, I say obviously, let's establish that it comes from William Shakespeare, who wrote it. That's the etymology. And I believe it was Macbeth, or was it Hamlet?
Hamlet.
My goodness. Okay, Hamlet. And so to be or not to be, that is the question, whether to suffer etc. The whole thing. The interesting part about this, when I first read it in high school in Grant Cache, I like Shakespeare. I like the way it reads. I like the way it works in my mind. It really works for me. But when I read it, of course, I had an initial interpretation of what Shakespeare meant. And as it turns out, my interpretation was different than the classmates that I had. And so that has been the way of life. As I have read more Shakespeare over the years, my interpretation is different than the guy next to me. And it doesn't mean he's right or I'm right. It's just that it's different. Now, to this exact quote, to be or not to be, that is the questioner. Just we're using to be or not to be for now. Across the world stage, actors do it in a whole pile of different ways. Sometimes it's looking at a dagger, sometimes it's looking in a mirror. Sometimes it's not at all. In Japan and Russia and all across the world, they do this differently. Over the decades, sometimes it's come to refer to the politics of the day. Sometimes it's come to refer to the person. Sometimes it's lots of things. It can refer to the existential crisis of man, like where you're philosophically trying to understand what's up, all the way through to the act of to be or not to be, referring to suicide. And so, like, it has many, many, many different interpretations based not only on the reader, but actually on the acting stage. It is portrayed many different ways. So, no matter where this conversation goes, there is no right or wrong when it comes to be or not to be.
I 100% agree. And I have the quote up here. I'm going to break it down in a minute, but I want to get Clay's first thoughts on this initially. And those people watching, I want to hear you guys' thoughts. What are your initial thoughts on to be or not to be? But Clay, what do you got?
Yeah, it's hard not to contextualize it to now. I have three boys, and so now it's like playful. When you hear to be or not to be, it's almost like you're charading and laughing. That's kind of how we interpret it now. So then when you think about it, it makes me curious to the times that Shakespeare wrote to be or not to be, and how serious and how rare a play was. Just being able to go to a play and watch someone perform in a show like that. So it's interesting. It's fun to think about the time period at which it was wrote, and then how it kind of is looked at today. How we kind of make it this playful thing. So initially, that's kind of where my mind goes when I
dig it. And I think, interestingly enough, the idea that it's kind of playful nowadays denotes the evolution over time, because it was a very serious, like Hamlet is a very serious play. It's got a lot of physical, philosophical notes to it on all aspects of it. But before we go too deep into the actual play, I'm just going to read a portion of the quote, because it is quite a speech from Hamlet in the play itself. But I want to just touch on the first section here. It says, "To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them." And I really love that sequence of events, because you could take it in many ways. So let's pass it around. Sean, what do you think? First up.
Well, you can take it many ways, but generally speaking, the way it's offered up by Shakespeare is in a binary choice. You get to choose this or that, to be or not to be, this or that, yes or no, up, down, in, out, binary. He offers a binary choice. But one of the great things about Shakespeare is so he's writing for the time. He's writing for the audience. And what Clay said actually is quite important. We should come back to that. The fact that when these kind of things were being written, you were freaking lucky if you got to attend a play, because mostly you were slopping out the pig trough for most of your life and didn't have the cash to be able to go, eat fruit and watch a play. That just wasn't commonplace. So if you were a commoner, if you got to go and watch a play, then the play had to have something in it for you that you could take away for the rest of your life. And I believe Shakespeare wrote that way. So it was written to entertain, of course, to create philosophical thought, of course, but I believe it was written, I'm going to say it vaguely enough, with enough room for interpretation in there, that the commoner, if he was or she was lucky enough to attend a play, it could resonate with them, given that it was such a broader conceptual binary offering by him in this quote. And so he doesn't specify anything so directly that it excludes the commoner, and it doesn't include, the Danish royalty. I believe the play was wrapped around the Danish king dying and all that good stuff. And so when the prince is doing his little moment there, to be or not to be, you've got to understand that that prince, by the commoner, by the common man who would have been attending that play, would have been held to such a high reverence or such a high regard that Shakespeare could have written that in a way that the prince was exclusionary in his speech, but he didn't. He made it vague enough so that we can interpret you, me, and the common man in that time. So that's what I've got to say at this point on it.
Yeah, it's the binariness of it makes it a ubiquitous choice, right? It doesn't matter where you are in the social structure or where you are in life. You are offered this choice every day, every moment. You're going to either do something or you're not. Quick comment before I hit you, Clay. Ethos and Arrows Project jumped on the Instagram side, said, for the channel, to be or not to be, I think of Star Trek VI, Christopher Plummer. How did Klingons interpret Federation culture and incorporate it into their diplomacy? Which I think is an interesting thought pattern. Outside, even within the Star Trek reference, but in life, is like your interpretation of to be or not to be is going to be slightly different than everybody else's. Clay, what do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of angles there. So to go back to the meaning behind it and the duality or the ability to choose, it reminds me of John Steinbeck has a book called East of Eden, and a big part of the book is eventually one of the characters reveals this word timshil, and what it means is it means to choose or to be able to choose. And so some would say that that's actually what makes us human, is the ability to choose at all, right? Because if you think of the animal, the reptile, it does what it does, and there's not really a moral choice that's being made. So being human is timshil. It's to choose. It's the ability to choose what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad. To the point of when you read it out, it would be cool to like be able to see it and look at it. But the thing that I love about, and I think most people love this, they just may not realize it, is these older plays, people didn't just write paragraphs just to write paragraphs. Like it wasn't, communication now, we text all the time and we send emails all the time. But when someone wrote something for a play or for a book or something of meaning, each paragraph has so much meaning and so much universality that takes you down the road to contemplate your to be or not to be in the first place. And so when you read stuff like that, it's like you could sit down with that one paragraph and like read it 3 times and probably come up with a different way to interpret it every single time. And that's beautiful, right? That's what makes a play open for emotion that you could bring in, is because the way it's written is just so universal, but also just so specific to an individual. And that's what's beautiful. That's why it is what it is, right? That's why he is Shakespeare.
That's why he is Shakespeare. I like that. So I have a question on this, because I was looking at this as a, we talked about it earlier, Sean. You said that it's a binary choice. It could be even life or death, or it could be what we choose to do. And I'm digging this, Clay, the fact that it's a human aspect to have the choice. Because I was thinking as just an animal. I say just an animal, but let's say a leopard. That leopard is hungry all the time. It's going to hunt. It's not a real choice. I'm going to go hunting now. I'm always on the hunt, and when there's an opportunity, I'm going to take it. So it's quite interesting. But I want to ask about like.
Hey, just hang on a sec.
Okay,
so
what do you got?
I don't want to create such a distinction between to be or not to be. As humans, we get to granularly and deeply understand that. If we set our minds to it, we can think deeply about this subject, whereas animals cannot. So using the leopard as an example, you said that, the leopard generally is always hungry and it's going to hunt. It wants to hunt. It frickin' is born to hunt. It is to be. It is being. That leopard is being. It's not that it is not being. It's frickin' maximum being. And when it's like tearing after an antelope or a gazelle or whatever, and it's within like a paw strike of getting its prey, that freaking leopard is being, man. It is to be. And so because we believe that we're so highly evolved that we are now podcasting and we're on top of the game, we're the apex predator and all that good stuff. There's people who are doing what we're doing right now and aren't being. You know what I'm saying? Like the leopard is being, man. And we've got humans that aren't. And so I don't want to like say that because we're part of the animal kingdom right at the freaking top, baby, we win, win, win. That is not the case. In fact, I would say that a big chunk of the animal kingdom is more being than a lot of the human population at times. How's that?
I dig it.
Man.
That's a great clarification. Clay, what do you got?
No, I think that's exactly right. What's interesting is we choose to bother ourselves about being and what is to be at all. Whereas the cheetah, yeah, it's absolutely more efficient and is being more itself than we are. And we know that, and we still wrestle with it constantly. That's the choice. The choice isn't that it makes us better. It's actually a hindrance in a lot of ways. Someone had a saying of like, show me an intelligent man and I'll show you a man that likes to be alone, something like that. There's some quote like that, right? So it's like the intellect isn't that it makes us superior. It's actually what troubles us the most. That's kind of the issue with addiction, with shame, guilt, all of these kind of complex emotions is what is being. And then your question goes, okay, well, if there is being, what is being itself? And then the religious text would say ipsum esse is Latin for they believe, not trying to stay away from religion, that being itself is, the top of the hierarchy of being. So being itself is what we contemplate all the time. And there you go. Why do we do that? Why do we choose? Why is there duality? Why is there a ponderance of being or not being at all? The cheetah doesn't do that. And I wish I could be more like the cheetah, honestly. I think I wish that I could be more myself. And that is what makes it difficult to be human.
So then perhaps the choice itself is actually a luxury. Because I think the cheetah, the leopard, the wild animal that is just being, truly in and of itself, being itself, doesn't have the luxury of choosing that or not, whereas we do. We can live a life that is not being. We can choose to, I mean, there's the quote was like, most men die at 30 and live a life of quiet desperation for the rest of the night, and they fully die at 75, whatever. But I think that's part of it, because choice is such a big deal. And yet we all come from a background where we chose to sign on the dotted line. We chose to give our life for others, for an idea, for the flag, for whatever choice we made at the time, right? For ourselves to be cooler, to be more like a ninja, for Sean. But like, how do we wrestle with that between the luxury of choice and the choosing to give up that choice to something else, to someone else, to an idea? Clay, I'm going to come right back to you. What do you think? Oh, you're muted, bud.
So I think now you're just entering into the realm of theology, right? Philosophy, the love of knowledge; theology, God knowledge, and religious knowledge. So it's really hard, in my past life. I feel like it's been forever now, but I would, when in talking to addicts, there's no way that the conversation, when someone's at that level, doesn't turn towards a not philosophical, a theological direction. And so when you start asking these kinds of questions, to me, it's now we're entering into the realm of theology in some ways, and it's hard to steer away from it. If the questions get into being itself, because I think the stories. To Jordan Peterson often says that, and I'm sure it's true. I couldn't quote specifically what scientist or whatever, but we learn mostly through story. So telling stories, it's how we learn. That's how we used to pass on information. So if we want to understand morality and emotion and why human beings are the way they are, we had to create these methods of understanding that. Now, was it given to us divinely, or was it created by the human being? I think we'll never know. But ultimately, it's helpful. it does good for most people, but equally it can be just as terrible. So it's a, theology is a tough world to live in. It's a tough place to talk, these days. It seems I sound like an old man these days.
All them whippersnappers don't know
All
what
them
I went through.
whippersnappers.
Love it. Quick comment. Ethos Neris from the Instagram side says, Sean is at self-actualizations levels of Maslow, and carries on, says, you can be a leopard if you lose electricity and some social fabric for like a week. I was like, that's a good point as well. And then he carries on and says, if you truly think about being, it is terrifying because you are going to die. So like at some point that being is going to end. Sean, you got any thoughts?
I do. So, the interesting part to what Clay was saying is, okay, now we're not leopards, now we're human beings, and human beings have the same choices as leopards: eat or not eat, hunt or not hunt, except a leopard has a very clear understanding of its primal drive. It has a very clear sense of what it is here for. It is, quite simply, it is here to hunt and procreate. Did I miss anything? I mean, other than lazing around in the sun for a little bit, digesting what it just ate, it's going to hunt and it's going to procreate. That's it. And so, generally speaking, when you look at it from a purely biological level, that's what we're all doing. And so what we do as a modern society is we wrap so many layers around those two simple things, hunting and procreating. We want to educate ourselves. We want to interact with others. We want to be helpful. We want to build skyscrapers. We want to predict the weather, and we want to paint beautiful art. We want to do all of these things that are layered on top of our primal instincts. And so let's just add a few other primal instincts to hunt and procreate. Now we've got 8. We've now got 8 primal things that we're all about as humans. And I'll bet you that the bulk of society can't get beyond 3 or 4 things that they would list off as what they're primally about. Because at some point between number 2 and number 3, the distraction would be what kind of vanilla bean latte they're going to have. Or I got to get the bus. The bus is here in 75 seconds. Whatever it is, the modern society that bleeds into our fundamental instincts that we have lost touch with. So, to be or not to be, I'm proposing that a bulk of society isn't being what they are at their primal core. They are not being who they are by focusing on the things that are only veneer wrappers of their misunderstood primal sense.
Clay, you got any points on that?
Yeah, no, it makes you wonder, to his point, of what do most people, and I don't want to speak for most people, but do they have a construction in their mind of what being is to them? Like what equals being for the human being? The leopard has its obvious tasks, and so what does the human being see as its task? What is our task as human beings? I don't know if we know that, and I guess my conceptualization would be, in spite of death, we live. So what that would do to an organism is it would make us want to progress as fast as we could. And we have thumbs and we're really good at it. So to live and try to be as productive as possible in the faith or in the face of our pending morality that we're completely aware of, which I'm not sure the leopard is. I don't want to speak for a leopard or an elephant, but it just doesn't seem like they're as aware of the pending death in the same way that we are, to create the emotions and the bonds. That's a huge part of being human with other people. I'm not saying other animals don't bond. I'm just saying the limited time and choosing to live a life in spite of death is, to me, what the purpose of being human is.
I'm digging it. Ethos and Arrows Project jumped on the Instagram side and said, I was going to say, yeah, the leopards tasks are to to eat and procreate, and also to lick its balls, probably. So just having some fun with that one. Blackwater diving,
It's
Blackwater
self-care.
technical
I mean,
self-care. There
self-care
you
is
go.
important.
That's important. It is. Blackwater technical diving says we all want to look at the lion in the room. It's a predator thing, predation, absolutely. And to your point, Sean, I want to touch on something. Was you said that we have a whole bunch of tasks, but I don't think we do. I think as mammalian creatures, we have the same task. We want to eat, we want to procreate, and everything in between those are kind of ancillary tasks. It's where you let those ancillary tasks take over everything else. So you let your job take over, you let your family, you let your et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to go work on my car rather than doing the other things that are required, because we still have natural instinctual drives to procreate, to eat, to sleep, those basic things that the hierarchy of needs. So I want to push back on that a little bit, because I think we still have those tasks. We just fade over them rather than adding more. What do you think, Sean?
No, I disagree. And it's not a hard disagree. I understand what you're saying. I understand the spirit of what you're putting across. But, beyond hunting and procreating, I do believe as human beings we have a genuine, not desire, but a need to further our lineage. So we have children. And so, I don't know how it works for leopards or snails. I have no idea. But I know how it works for Sean. The moment I held my first little package in my hand called Evan, like within 10 seconds, my life changed. And that life changed in like a significant way. And it has ever since. And so that isn't like me reading a parenting book the day before and thinking, I'm going to change my life when my son is born. Like when my son is born, when he was born, my life changed, irrespective of Shakespeare. And so I do believe inside humans there are things that we can account for when we study our life, and we can understand that they are non-negotiables. Like we may negotiate with ourselves that we don't have a feeling that we want to raise a family or that we want to do the best thing we can for our kids. We can negotiate with ourselves and lie to ourselves and say that that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to work on my Maserati. But no matter how much I would lie to myself, I would know, like deep inside my soul, inside my core, I would know that my job now is to raise the best version of kids that I can. Anything less than that is me negotiating with myself. And so, I could list off a number of things, Chance, that I feel are central to being a human being that a lot of people negotiate away, to include like just being a good person. I feel that genetically, maybe not genetically, but somewhere in our soulful DNA, we're all supposed to just be good people, good humans, but we negotiate that as well. So anyway, there's a number of things that I feel to be are already existent and are core to us. It's how much the not to be we negotiate in.
I'm digging that a lot. Quick little comment here from Operation Trauma Recovery jumped in here. Cheers, troops. Good to see you, buddy. And then Ethos and Arrows says, I wonder if depression in the animal kingdom affects procreation as it does with humans. Is depression even a thing for most animals in the wild? Interesting questions. But Clay, you got any thoughts on what Sean dropped there?
On the question or what Sean was saying?
Either or, whatever you got.
Oh. Yeah, no, it's like to leopard is to hunt as human is to innovate. I think that's what our purpose is. I think we're here to innovate. Procreation definitely does that, but back to the duality and the ability to choose. If you zoomed out and you just looked at human beings doing what they're doing on planet Earth, we innovate, and we innovate way better than the leopard. If we're talking about being human, I know leopards, they do their thing too, and I love leopards, but they don't have giant skyscrapers and drones flying about. And is that good or bad? I don't know, but we definitely do innovate, and it feels like that's our purpose. And if I were to create a creature that could innovate well, and I would want it to have an internal drive like the leopard is to hunt, I would let them be really aware of their mortality. I would want them to contemplate it, and I would want them to build bonds and procreate while they did it. And that seems like it's kind of what the human being is, man. We're here to innovate. And what is sad, to what Sean was saying before, some human beings aren't being. They're choosing to live a very comfortable life of no innovation. And that's what you're made for. And maybe the reason that you're sad and have depression is because you're not innovating in some way in your life, because it's what we're meant to do. It is, I think.
I really like that. And I got a thought on this, and I want to throw it at you guys, is that you said the awareness of the mortality is what allows us to kind of innovate and try to build upon that mortality, right? We know that their time is going to end, and therefore want to do something with it, want to have it expand beyond us.
Yeah, and the only way to do it successfully is to be a good person, like Sean was saying. Like that's the only way to do it. Is he inherently believes that people are good. And I think that's the only way to be. If you want to be successful as a community of humans, you would want to, believe people are good and be good yourself, whatever that means. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's all good, man. That's a great point. It goes along with what I wanted to say, is that if you truly believe that the world is good and you want to innovate in life, or you want to innovate in your life, you have to sacrifice portions of that life to innovate. You have to spend time to do it. You have to learn how to do this skill. You have to figure out how sticks work and then start smashing things. Like, you have to take that time to sacrifice it. And I'm wondering, how do we decide? How do we figure out what is worth that time and what isn't? How do we build upon the idea that if we're innovators, we're going to have to sacrifice time to eat, time to procreate, time to do these things in order to innovate? What do you guys think? Sean, I'm going to come to you.
Well, there's a few things going on in there, but first of all, I got to be a little careful with the language, because sacrificing is a strong word. And so, like, to be, if you're trying to be something and it's a righteous thing, like, is it really a sacrifice? Or is it the thing that needs to be done, should be done, will be done for the right reasons, and you'll be joyfully doing it because you're saving the planet? You know what I'm saying? So sacrifice, you give up your Netflix series for that week to sacrifice some time to, like, save the planet. Now, was that a sacrifice, or are you just kind of bummed because you didn't get to see the latest Netflix series? Sacrifice is a strong word, and it typically denotes a negative. Whereas if you're trying to save the planet joyfully doing something that you're freaking awesome at and love doing, is it a sacrifice? Checking that back at your chance.
I use sacrifice intentionally. I know it's a strong word, and I know that you have, I know that you have an issue with the word, but I think it's an accurate, because I get your point in the fact that, like, yeah, Netflix is not really a priority in life when you're trying to save the world, but there are times where you're going to have to sacrifice huge portions of time. Like, to do this podcast, I have to sacrifice time with my family. And even though I love this, and this is part of what makes me and giving this information up, but I recognize that I do have to spend time away from the other things that I love in my life. And it is a sacrifice, because I would love to sit upstairs and play games with my boys, but instead I come down here and I edit stuff for hours at a time so that I can then push ideas out to the world for people to think about. So by doing what I'm doing, I'm actively sacrificing time from other things that I love doing in order to do it. So
that is you made my point, and my point is this, that it is a unique thing. Sacrifice is not, like, this should not be a word that is used as a negative or derogatory, because, next thing you know, you're making a sacrifice by not goofing off gaming. What's next? You're making a sacrifice by not pounding back a bag of Doritos for the rest of your life. And so, like, I can keep going. We can rack up the sacrifice-o-meter until it's, oh, you didn't have your yellow umbrella drinks on the Mexican Riviera? all day for the rest of your life. What a sacrifice.
My
And
Mai
so
Tais.
so sacrifice is like a word that is bandied around. It is like thrown around like, I sacrificed my vanilla bean latte today for dot dot dot, which is what you're kind of saying right now. If you're using it in a way that is liberally tossed around throughout your day. To me, a sacrifice is something like kind of epic. Like, I'm having to make a choice between my family or dot dot dot. Like big sacrifices, not tiny little giveaway moments of goofing off on a computer game or eating Doritos. So I'm not pushing back at you, Chance. What I am saying is there is granularity to this sacrifice word. And what I see it being used as nowadays, which you literally did use in your speech just a couple of minutes ago, is it has been diluted to a point where if you don't get to suck your thumb the way that you like to when you were 3 years old, you're now making a sacrifice. This is what we've come to. People feel that they're sacrificing their life because they've got to do the hard right thing rather than the easy sloppy thing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that too. It would be good if people took the time to like distinguish what that word means. Especially one that you could date back. It's Latin and Greek origins it's an old word, and it should be thought through of like what does the word sacrifice mean? Because to me, the word sacrifice could mean to serve. So when you serve someone else, to me, that's a sacrifice. It reminds me of the term servant leadership, right? If I want to be a leader, I have to be capable of doing all of the tasks that someone else can do, but also do it in a way that I can serve them to improve upon their life. So sacrifice to me is to serve. And maybe it's good to take the time to like think through the word. I think maybe that's the real tragedy is, we're here talking about Shakespeare. And, think through words sometimes, and their meaning and what does it mean to you? And maybe, what do they call it? Linguistic neural programming. That's just a really fancy word for using words to change someone else's perspective. It's like a psychological tool. But your internal linguistics can shape your world. And so if you don't think through words like Chance and Sean are, you could be thinking of something in a negative sense that could really be altered by what does it mean to sacrifice my day to serve someone else? And then it's not negative at all, it's positive. So it's interesting. I think more people should take the time to think through these words and what do they mean to you, because family's one. It's a big one. Being blessed. What does that mean to you? People say that one all the time. It's for someone like me and you guys as well. Sometimes it feels like a tragedy that more people don't talk about it. They don't communicate about what does it mean. What does it not mean?
Well, let's break it down because I looked it up. Sacrifice is it's from the Old Latin sacra and facere, which means sacred rites and to make or do. So it's to do something sacred, which is what I really enjoy about the concept of sacrifice. And Dan C here commented, it is exactly what I'm talking about. He says, I lost my eyesight to save another person. I don't call that a sacrifice of just doing what I was supposed to be doing. But that is a sacrifice. He was doing something sacred. In your point, Clay, he was serving another person. He was giving of himself in a sacred way to save someone else, in my eyes. What do you got?
Yeah, and that's really fascinating because, and I know Sean knows what I'm talking about because he's been to Japan and I have not. But so the Japanese, they have those torii gates. If you guys, for people who are watching this, it's probably in your karate gym somewhere, but it's like two pillars with this swoopy thing. And so the Japanese, they're animistic. So they believe that anything can have like a soul or life, but the Torii gates were the entry into a part of the forest, and they believed that that part of the forest was sacred. Sacred is another one of those words that's, we could probably have 2 podcasts on sacred, because what's sacred to a person, because when I see someone who's overweight, I wish it was more sacred to them to want to spend time with their family longer, to have a better life. Like, I think those things are sacred, but to them, maybe it's not. Who knows? So that what is sacred to people, I think is maybe it's values, maybe it's their ethics, or a combination of the two. But it just seems like not a lot of people are really talking about their values or their ethics or their morals or what they believe in. It's just, I don't know. I feel like I have to meet you guys, and to talk about it. I wish I could have these kinds of conversations with people all the time, but I'm thankful for you guys, though, for sure, for always having those conversations, be willing to go into those chasms.
I love it. And I appreciate the fact that when we get you on here too, Clay, because you're more than willing to get in these conversations. When I bring these things up with the other people in my life, a lot of them are just like, what? Why would you even consider these things? And because I got time, but I'm also very interested. Sean, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, so you're describing like 2 phases of a 3-phase process. You're wanting to have the conversation with someone, and they're just not interested because that's just not what they're into. But then you're delivering your comments about the sacrifices that you're making as you're putting a Clippy McClip down in your basement instead of gaming. And you're using big, bold words like, I'm all about the sacrifice. They don't want to talk about it. You're talking at them about your freaking sacrifice. The third phase is actually you and them having a conversation about what the heck you're talking about. Not what you're talking at them about, but what are you talking about? Just as I did with you. That is the classic case of, hang on a sec, what does the word sacrifice mean to you? What does sacred mean to you? And it's not that I want to be pedantic. The show isn't about pedanticism. It is about like refining someone's speech so that we can all learn. Just like Shakespeare, the way he writes, it is open to interpretation. And when you blast out one paragraph of William Shakespeare, you can spend the rest of the day interpreting that with a group, and the group will come up with a bunch of different self-beliefs on what it means, just like the word sacrifice. But whether it's Shakespeare or us in this podcast, by the end of the conversation about the interpretation of, everyone's the wiser. Everyone comes away clearer about the person across from them and the person inside of them. And so without these Shakespeare-like conversations, then, nobody's the wiser. I don't know more about Chance and Clay, and they don't know more about me, but more correctly, as a collective, we can now understand what we represent as a group, because no matter what my singular opinion is, until it is group combined, then I'm not representing the group and the group isn't representing me. So when I fold my opinion into a group like the 3 of us, if we all kind of sort of nod our heads and say, I can get behind that as a group, well, now we have a group understanding of something. Those 2 don't have to be precisely the same. My personal opinion of what sacrifice is, and then our group's opinion of what sacrifice is, don't have to be picture perfect, but they do need to be within the same art gallery. And so, just a few things to think about there.
Yeah, and to your point, Sean, this is the interpretation coming into it. When I said play games with my boys, you thought video games. You thought sit in front of the TV playing Xbox, whatever. And I was thinking like Dungeons and Dragons or
why would I have thought of
chess.
that? Though? Why would I have thought that?
Because I was a gamer and I
Yes,
still
you
game every
were.
once in a while. Yeah. And this is the part of the interpretation of it, is that each of us are going to hear this in a certain way, each of us. And this is why I love when you refine language, because it needs to be refined. Because your interpretation, if you would just let that go and be like, oh God, Chance is sacrificing video game time so that he can do the show. But in my mind, I'm sacrificing actual time, quality time that I'm going to spend with my boys. Like that. And that to me is a huge sacrifice. I am giving up something that I love to do something else that I love. So that's the trade-off for me. I'm taking something sacred and the act of something sacred, quality time with my boys, and I'm putting that aside to do something else that I also find sacred by providing information to the masses. So I love the fact that these clarifications I think are so important in the conversation of life, because otherwise it's just it's our interpretation, and who knows where we go from there. Clay, what do you got?
Yeah, no, it sounds like an interpretation could be the death of one thing for the birth or the lost time of another thing, and sacrifice could also be to serve. It really depends on the way that it resonates with the individual, in a lot of ways. So it sounds like, Chance, you're saying that you're sacrificing time, with your boys to do this other thing. And then now if you shifted that same thought process of one thing being sacrificed and another one's not, of just you're serving one purpose to serve another purpose, right? Now it doesn't seem like this thing I'm ultimately going to resent. It seems like a thing that I want to offer. And that literal shift can change the emotion and the mood and the desire to want to do it over time, right? That's what we really want, is to do it over time. And running's terrible. Anyone can get good at it in a little while, but to do it consistently over time, it's all internal motivation. There is no external motivation with running. It's all internal. It's internally built. Once you get to a certain amount of mileages, you are not going further because your brother, sister, cousin, or what it's going to look like. It's only because you're internally driven. Biking is the same way, very much the same way. So I think that when you shift the way that you, again, linguistically program, if you want to call it that, or just internal dialogue, self-narrative, it can change the way that you interact and pursue things over time, even with people that you've known for a long time, and sometimes they're the hardest to communicate with. So yeah, to serve suits me, but if to you it feels like the removal of one thing for the other thing, then try shifting though. See if that makes you feel better. Just try to shift that way you speak to yourself. See what happens.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. Yeah.
100%. Sean, what do you got?
So Clay's talking about NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. The first time I ever heard about it was back in like 1996. I was getting into an elevator and someone started talking to me about NLP. He figured he was a master NLPer himself, and as he was explaining it to me, he was actually explaining to me that he was using NLP on me right at that moment, and that by the time the elevator door opened, he would be able to control me to some degree. Of course, I laughed at him, and then I started sneering at him. But, that's NLP. That was my introduction to a guy who was doing it wrong. And so I've met people who do it right. Now, Clay had said something interesting to me about NLP just in the last few minutes, where he said you can use NLP on someone to ... But you know who you can use it on? Your freaking self. And Chance, this is a perfect case study of you using NLP on yourself, neuro-linguistic programming. And so, you to some degree, and I'm loosely categorizing this now to make a point. I know that you don't feel this way, and I know this is not exactly how you're running your life, but you basically phrased it up as such that, it's a binary choice. I either have to serve the collective, or I have to be the best dad in the world by gaming with my boys, this or that. And that is not true, because your boys are at school right now. And if they're not at school, eventually they'll be in bed tonight. And you won't, because you're a grown adult and they're not. And so you have time tonight where you just don't have chance to game with them in any fashion. So really what we're talking about is not the if this or then that. What we're talking about is simply time management, time prioritization, and then taking away all of the, we'll call them excuses, for lack of a better term, to do what you need to do, which is to serve the collective the way you are. But if anything gets in front of that, anything's competing against that, like your boys, like not desperately needing your time, but they need your time, then it gets the time. But that is not the case for the day to day. You have time in your day to be able to do the things that you need to do, just like I do, just like Clay does, just like we all do. We all prioritize our day and we all make time to do the things that are prioritized. And so there is a way for you to do this, but you kind of framed it up as a little bit of victimhood to some degree. You are NLPing yourself to believe that your sacrifice is either this or that, but that isn't the case. Do you agree or disagree?
I disagree with you guys a little bit, but I agree with the fact that, yes, the NLP concept is actively happening, but I just want to touch back onto what we were talking about earlier, that sacrifice has a negative connotation, and I don't see it as a negative connotation. I see it as it's an act of service, like Clay was saying. To sacrifice something is an act of service. I'm giving up something of myself for others. And to your point, absolutely, prioritization is key in life, and my kids are in school. I'm here. And the ability when they are home for me to be home. This is one of the reasons why I didn't get a trailer out yesterday, was there was kid stuff and parent-teacher interviews and all these things. I just didn't have an opportunity to get a clip out. And I'm okay with that. That's those sacrifices that I'm making. And those, again, for me, it's a positive thing. It's an act of service by giving up one thing for somebody else. And when I say, again, giving up, has a negative connotation, like, oh no, I don't get to do this thing anymore. But I'm looking at it as an active handing of, like, here, take this time so that I can use it over here. Take this time so that I can use it over here. And I see it as a positive thing, which is I'm glad we're digging into this, because it is I think for most people, they see a sacrifice as a negative, as Clay was saying, and then it becomes drudgery, which the clips and stuff used to be for me when we first started the collective. It was oh God, I got homework. Oh God, I got to get this out. Whereas now it's a creative process. It's a time that I can actively focus and be in that moment a creative. I get to be a human being in my element when I'm here doing my clips, and I get to be a human element when I'm with my boys, and when I'm with my wife, and when I'm out in the world meeting members of the collective, right? I get to be there in that moment. I think that's critical. Clay, what do you got?
Yeah, no, it's funny. The older I get, the more I wish I was held accountable by people. It's so funny. Like, I don't know why. When I was young, it was like, hey man, I got it figured out. You guys don't tell me nothing. I'm 16. I can do whatever I want. I didn't want accountability. But man, now as I get older, I'm like, man, I wish more people would hold me accountable. Part of this gym is to hold me accountable, that I keep training and that I keep learning and that I keep, innovating. And yeah, sometimes I feel as though more accountability would be better. So now I don't know if I want a Sean in my life. I'm just telling you that right now. He might be a little too much for me, but I do. It makes me think about being held accountable and how much, it's good for us. It's uncomfortable, and it does feel like a sacrifice, and it is daunting at times, but the times I hate it are still lower than the times that I enjoy being accountable and having to come to this space and having to take care of it, having classes ready. It on the outside, you would be like, Clay loves jiu-jitsu, right? Like, of course, whatever. But, it's hard. It's hard to have a structured, cohesive thought process that I present in the classes over a period of time so that they learn the best. And that feels like a sacrifice, but it feels great when I do, in those flow moments where I kind of hit it. It's like uphill, bell curve, downhill, and it never stops. There's never an uphill. I get it. I stay there forever, and then no downhill. Nope, it's an uphill. I got this. I'm greatest. Oh, up, down. It's this constant wave. But
I know that feeling all too well. Yes, all
yeah,
the way down.
yeah.
It
That
is,
accountability, though, man. It's
yeah, and it's true. And Sean can be a bit of a handful. He can be, but I dig it. This is the thing I needed at the time was I needed someone, Sean, in my life to, knife hand a little bit and be like, hey, dude, you're saying stuff that you're not doing it. Now, I got a bunch of comments on the Instagram side. I just want to hit on this before we jump into Sean. Ethos and Arrows Project jumped in and said, double speak, baby. This is a big issue in society right now. A lot of people saying things without understanding the meaning of it or saying things that mean something else. Blackwater Technical Diving says, bad deeds weigh more than good, for sure. Talks about agency. Ethos and Arrows Project says, in 2025, people's Tim Hortons at 6 a.m. is sacred. Yay, commercialism. And then Blackwater Diving jumps in and says, empathy is the word, the willingness, good moralizations, absolutely. And then Ethos Neris says, I kind of wish people would look at the to be or not to be through a living in harmony with nature lens. Like a lot of the things we are talking about here are very human-centric and don't really have consideration to the rest of the animal kingdom. And for big movements, at least, we must consider that we are only like 1/billionth of the equation. And I think that's a great point because we are. We're also all the things as well. And then Gray Man Project jumped in here. Good to see you, Brady. He says, what's up? Look at these awesome dudes. Good to see you, bud. Sean, you got any thoughts?
I do. So something that, we need to talk about is, and like what we just talked through, that's all great stuff, man. And yeah, I can be a handful, but you're welcome, everyone, because everyone needs a little bit of handful in their life. You know what I'm saying? Me too. I'm a freaking handful for myself, and I've got friends who are handfuls. And if you don't have a handful friend in your life, well, doom on you. Like, get a grip and get a handful friend. Someone who drives you crazy sometimes. Like, I drive Chance crazy sometimes. I drive everyone crazy sometimes. I drive myself crazy, so there you go. You're all welcome. I'll say this. We're talking about to be or not to be. And we're talking about it on a grand scale where we do a binary decision like I'm going to be a martial arts dojo owner. I'm gonna become a club within my community. So that's what you say. I'm going to be. But then, like Clay already knows this, and anyone who's owned a business that you pour your heart and soul into, eventually, over a period of time, might be a year, might be 2 years, might be 3 months, but over a period of time, this is what starts happening. The to be part starts getting diluted by a distractive mindset. You're trying to be the thing that you said you would, but now you find yourself thinking about everything else. So you are in it in the moment, but you're everywhere else but in it. So as Clay sits in his dojo right now, he is in his dojo. And because he's so new-ish to the game, it's still a bit of the honeymoon phase. Clay's going to be maximum Clay in that dojo for a year and change. But 2 years, 3 years from now, however long it takes, there will be a time where he'll be physically in the dojo, but he'll be everywhere else but in it. So the to be part, we're all supposed to be where we're at, where our feet are at, where the moment is. We're all supposed to be in the moment. But invariably, over time, we are everywhere else but in the moment. Now, do you agree or disagree?
I totally agree. Clay, what do you think?
No, yeah, everything you just said was spot on, and I actually kind of thought about that a little bit. So my plan was I'm gonna get my black belt soon, whatever, maybe this year. I'm close, right? I've been doing it for a long time, really good relationship. I'm consistent, whatever. But when you get it, there's this, other black belts out there. If you're listening to me, you probably know. It's like, is it the end of the playful guy that goes on the mat, doesn't care if he gets submitted, doesn't care, like don't care, Or is it, okay, now I'm going to tighten up. I'm only going to stand on the side for the class. I'm only going to instruct. I'm not going to get out there and roll with my guys. So I was like, you know what better way to hold myself accountable? So instead of letting other people be my accountability, I'm like, okay, how can I hold myself accountable? Well, I'm going to open a space. Because if I open a space, guess who has to be on the mats? Because I'm not the kind of guy that's just going to stand there. It's not me. It's not in me, even if I wanted it to be. So now here I am. Hopefully in 2 and 3 years, like Sean is talking about, I've held myself accountable and I've built relationships that I don't slack on myself, because I do fear it. That's why I love following you, Sean, because I hope that when I'm your age, I'm still doing half the stuff that you're doing. Eventually, though, I am going to sneak up in a ninja suit beside you when you're taking out your trash, and I'm coming for you. I'm just know, watch your back.
You say that now, but you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to sneak up on him. You're going to think that you have him, and then he's going to like ninja disappear, smoke bomb, and just like appear behind you, and then you're going to be like, oh man, I thought I had it. But
yeah, hits me with an apple behind his back.
Right, exactly. It'd be great. And so I have a perfect example of this, and this is happening right now in my life. That my wife and I were talking about this last night, of to be or not to be. So recently, I've had a number of people come up to me and ask me about equine therapy, equine facilitation, things like that. And I've held my certification for a while, and then I just let it lapse this last year because I was like, well, it doesn't seem to be happening right now. I can push it a little farther down the road, and I'll get there eventually. And now everybody's asking me about it, so now I got to go back and get my certification, so on and so forth. A friend of mine hit me up and was like, hey man, I'm starting a program. I want you a part of it, in or out. And I was like, I had a moment to be or not to be, and I was like, all right, I'm in. Let's do it. I'm down. Now, 2 years ago, I would not have been down. Even though I had my certification, I would have been a little bit standoffish and maybe like, oh, I don't know if I really want to do it. And I would dilute the idea and I would defer it a little bit farther on until I felt comfortable. One of the benefits of the show, and Sean barking at me a little bit every once in a while, is that now I know it's not about being comfortable. The opportunity is in front of me. And if I want to be that person, I need to accept that I am that person and move forward with it. And that's what I'm doing. So right now we're actually developing the program. We're getting all the stuff set up and diving right into it. And I know in 2 or 3 years, my brain's going to be like, well, am I really doing it? Am I really that person? Or maybe while I'm working with somebody on the horses, that I'm going to be thinking about the podcast or whatever. But these types of conversations are going to keep me grounded a little bit more. I'm going to be able to look back and reflect on it and say, well, wait, what am I? What am I? Who am I in this moment? Am I the person I'm supposed to be, or am I somewhere else?
So I have a question.
Yep.
What made you start equine therapy ever at all? Because it's not like if I went downtown and asked 100 people, none of them would have equine therapy certification. So like, why did you do it at all?
So it's actually a funny story, but when I got out of the military, I saw a therapist that was offered up to me by the military. They said, this is the guy you go see, that you got to go to this clinic, and this is the doctor you're going to see. And I was like, Roger, good to go. After a year of seeing him, I got worse and worse and worse every day because him and I did not click, but I wasn't out of the mindset yet of you can do whatever you want. It actually took a friend of mine and a conversation of him telling me, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to see this person. You can go see somebody else. And it was in that moment that I was like, okay, well, if I can see anybody, I'm going to look for a trauma specialist, somebody that knows how to deal with veterans especially. And as I was going down the list, the first one I saw said Equinox Therapeutic, equine therapy, trauma specialist, veteran, not veteran friendly, but like has lots of veteran experience. And I was like, all right, I like horses. Like I grew up in the ranch. I grew up in the country. I've been around animals most of my life. Let's check it out. And I made huge strides in my own recovery through working with horses because they're mirrors. They don't respond in predator to predator reactions. It's predator prey. And so for you, this is another description that a friend of mine gave me was, think about this. You're going to try to get a prey animal to allow you to put the dead, tanned flesh of another animal on its back, which is the absolute most critical space for a prey animal, and then allow you as a predator to sit on its back. How do you do that? And I just like, it blew my mind. I had to really process it and think about it. And it all came back to the energy and how you manipulate the energy within yourself in order to manage the relationship with the animal. From that, I saw all these strides that I was making. And then I was looking around at my buddies who were not making the same kind of strides. They were still struggling a lot. They were having issues with their doctors and so on and so forth. And I was like, oh, I got to go get my certification. Like I gotta spread the word around. And this is part of, Sean made me do this. He made me write down my why as to who I am and why I'm doing all these things. And it was because I'm a facilitator at heart. I want to pass on information. It's one of the reasons the podcast is around. It's one of the reasons why I teach jujitsu. It's one of the, I have a drive in my soul to pass information that I find helpful. And so that's where it comes from.
It's cool. So you, in a sense, you get to be the horse for someone else, and you get to see that in them. But simultaneously, you should be your own horse sometimes.
Yep.
Chance. You know what I mean?
I do. 100% tracking. And
So it'd be cool. It'd be cool to help other people in the same way it helped you. What's more serving and fulfilling than that? That's a sacrifice.
It is a sacred act. I 100% agree with you. And this is why I look at sacrifice as such it's a wonderful thing, is that I get to give of myself to someone else. Sean, you got thoughts?
Yeah, just a thought, and it's not to try to twist things around too much. It's just carrying on with the topic at hand. I just wanted to make sure that you've considered this chance. That you might have a plan sometime in the mid-future, we'll call it 1-2 years away, whatever the case is, to get engaged in that. And I think you should. I think you'd be a great guy for it. But so what most people will do now that they've got that idea in their mind, they will start focusing on that idea like that's the solution. I'm gonna get to work on my solution that's in the mid-future. But literally, here you are on a podcast talking about equine therapy. And you could, by the way, from today right up until the time that you actually start physically doing equine therapy in the mid-future, 2 years from now, you could have every single podcast from now till then about equine therapy. You could create the structure, the scaffolding of your life around the midterm or mid-future goal that you've got, to have a reinforced position already in place when you start on day one of your equine therapy project. And so I think what most people misunderstand about life is that the goal that they set for their mid-future, 2 years from now, they'll get that in their head and they'll start daydreaming about that thing. I'm going to be Mr. Equine Therapy 2 years from now. How can I ruminate about that and not accomplish anything in my life while I think about and daydream on becoming Mr. Equine? That's what happens. I've seen it time and time again. But what you can do instead of that is have your goal 2 years from now, but start building scaffolding towards that goal with your already existing pipeline that you're in. Now, with Chance, the pipeline is to some degree podcasting. For the neighbor down the street, their pipeline will be XYZ, whatever it is. But within the pipeline, you can start creating scaffolding for your mid-future goal, which is generally, readily at hand for you, Chance. You could literally have our next episode about equine therapy or a tangential topic to it. And that is life, man. That if you don't do that between now and actually 2 years from now, if you aren't focused on tangentially sliding some of these things in, then you're to some degree giving up your sense of personal agency. Like, you know what you want. You know how to get there. You know what you can slide in and out of the podcast scene and get away with, we'll call it. And if you're not doing that, then are you actively engaged in the pursuit of being, to be? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's like if I'm hearing you right, so Sean's kind of saying to use the sacrifice as your catalyst to purpose. But the idea of the way he put it, Mr. Equine Therapy, it shouldn't replace or distract you from being better at all the things you're doing right now. It should be that sacrifice. The idea of achieving that should be what makes you better at what you're doing right now, not distracting you from it.
100%. And to your
That's
question,
that's
Sean.
that's fascinating. That's cool. That's a cool way to perceive that process. So I don't know.
I agree with you, Clay. And to Sean's point, yes, this is one of the reasons we're having this conversation is because of this. This is where I'm scaffolding my concepts of how do I truly be the thing that I want to be. Well, we can. I used to think that if I dressed the right way, then I would be the thing, or if I did the thing, then I would be the thing. But in all reality, it is I need to be the thing every day. So whether or not I am Mr. Equine Therapy, which I'm not by any means, the point is that I need to be able to facilitate the information to the people around me. How do I do that better? Well, I have conversations like this. How do I do that better on the jiu-jitsu mats? Well, I got to be on the jiu-jitsu mats. How do I do that in the equine realm? I got to be out there with the horses, and I have to choose to be there, not to be there, if you know what I mean, right? So I think this is the crux of the conversation, is that the choice of to be or not to be is not as grand as I think we look at it for the most part. It is a very distinct choice every day, every moment, to do your best or to choose to be in that moment. That's what I'm getting from it. Clay, what do you
Yeah,
think?
and purpose. That's what Sean and you guys are talking about. That's the thing that you hear the most. The thing that you hear the most in any self-help group or any online guru trying to sell whatever is they'll give you purpose, right? But like purpose isn't a thing that can be given. And so you would say, well, how does a person find purpose in their life? Like that's a deep question. That's a meaningful question. And an answer to that could be, well, what are you willing to sacrifice to the sacred degree of in your life, and let that thing be what gives you purpose to make it through your life right now? That is a really good answer. That's a good one. That's one I'll take with me and remember for a while. Sacrifice is what gives us purpose in a sense. It is.
I dig that. I like that a lot. I got a couple comments here I want to touch on, and then Sean, I want to get your thoughts on that particular concept. Gray Man Project, Brady jumped in here and said, live in accordance to nature in a way that you accept what happens with appreciation. Nature, not so much as in Mother Nature, but nature as Marcus Aurelius describes it, human nature, or the nature of the divine to be present. Ethos Neris says, I agree with you from a Western perspective. I'm not sure if somebody in a refugee camp is thinking the same way. I think they are thinking more about the not to be, which could actually be quite innovative to come full circle. That's true. And then says, I love horses, but I'm terribly allergic to them. It is a shame. It truly is. Horses are amazing. And then Brady jumped back and he says, all activity therapy, like equine, is just education of an activity where the mind is focused on it, that it eventually draws you away from what bothers you. Yeah, absolutely. It's about presence. It's about being able to look at your situation from multiple angles and not get lost in it. Absolutely. He continues, the more of the activity you dedicate yourself to, the more you think about it, the less you think about your problems and issues that bother you. Absolutely. And then Celtic McWalks jumped in here. Good to see you, buddy. Says, cheers, lads. And last one, Katie Hirschfeld jumped in here, said, it's not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, as they say in the 12-step program, which is exactly right. John, what do you got?
There's a number of things there. One thing that certainly caught my eye, caught my ear, was Brady with the human nature aspect. And of course, now we're studying human nature in nature. And you know what's tricky about that is most people don't understand nature because most people don't live in it. And most people don't understand human nature because they don't study it themselves or others. And therefore, we have someone on a horse who's trying to understand nature and human nature, and they're not doing either very well. And so, here's my cautionary tale: make sure you're joining the right equine therapy camp, because you could leave there more lost than found. That's just something to chew on. Something that does sort of deserve to be raised as a topic at hand, and that is, as we're chewing on the to be part, um, that's only understood if you understand what you're trying to be. And so, you can tell yourself that you're being in the moment, that namaste, I'm right in it. I am literally present in this moment. You can tell yourself that all day long, but as contextualized against what? How do you know that you're in the moment? Do you know that you're there because you're feeling your anger? You're feeling your joy? You're feeling your sorrow? You're feeling the wind on your cheek? How do you know that you're present? So, the to be part, if you are being now, what does being mean to you? Does that mean that your mind is racing, telling you that I'm here, I'm being? Or does it mean nothing? There's no thought. You're simply existing, and you are aware that you are existent. So the to be part is kind of a idea that isn't, I believe, deeply considered enough to be able to establish, are you here? You know what I'm saying?
I dig it. Clay, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, Sam Harris talks about this kind of thing of like, do we have free will or do we not have free will? And his answer is that we don't, because if you had free will, then, or no, he uses the example. He's like, well, if you have free will, then don't think your next thought. So kind of like to Sean's point of, we ultimately aren't necessarily in control of our next thought and our next action, but it could be that, Alan Watts, to the guy was that left the comment, was like, oh, from a Western perspective. But Alan Watts has a quote. It says that we are the apertures for which the universe perceives itself. Right. So maybe our to be and the purpose of to be is to just perceive the universe in its entirety. Unfortunately, there are bad things that happen to people as well, but the universe, in a sense, is still perceiving that those bad things happen, and something has to perceive it, and that's the creation of who we are. So that's more of an Eastern philosophy, but at the same time, to be is not to control your thoughts or to control nature or to control people or to control things. It's to perceive and maybe to serve in some degree.
I
Like that.
love that. And here's why: because I like Watts and I like Harris. I like the way that they think. And it doesn't mean that I agree with absolutely everything that they say. And it doesn't mean that when the two of them are in the same room, if it could have happened, if they would have been in the same room, that they would have agreed with each other or greatly disagreed with each other. For me, it's not about that. I love the way that Clay brought that up in referencing those two individuals. He brought it up in a way that is, to some degree, creative in my mind, that has got me thinking about the two of them in a unique way. And so I believe that that is part of the creation act. If I'm not here right now, or I'm here with you in the podcast, but if I wasn't with you, Clay, if I wasn't like sharing that moment with you where I was absorbing your creative play between those two characters, then I would have missed the boat. I would have missed life, as it were. And so I believe that the to be part is you and I sharing a moment intentionally where I'm paying enough attention of accepting your thoughts with my open mind that it has meant something. The moment meant something, and therefore it is to be. Where it would have not to be part is if I would have been daydreaming, if I would have been letting you talk and me not listening because 4 minutes ago I came up with quote unquote the best idea in the world, my retort, where I'm impatiently drumming my fingers on my desk until I get a moment to speak, and then I'm going to counterpoint something. But that sucks as a way to podcast, and it sucks as a way to live your life. And so I do believe the to be part is what we're doing. The or not to be is the part where we are not actively sharing the moment in the real time with another person.
I'm digging this. This conversation is awesome. Clay, what do you got?
No, just the Buddhists refer to it as unconditioning. So it's like if we could completely uncondition all of the things. Again, Alan Watts kind of talks about it, where he talks about, well, what's your name? You know, what does your name mean to you? Well, who gave you your name? And then you think through the process, and it's like, well, your mom gave you the name. So then, who are you, right? And so then they believe that you could be you in a past life into a present life, which is really fascinating thought experiment. If you don't believe in it, it's a really interesting way to think about it. But to be, to unconditioned, to go back to just reacting and moving and not thinking about everything would be a fascinating way to live. But I just don't think the human being is capable of doing it. I think we're too tuned in to the universe and wanting to be a part of it, that just tuning out is a detriment. You know, that's what addiction is to me in a lot of ways. Is I feel like it's like the highest high you could get, some would say, is just pure unadulterated reality with nothing. The drugs actually work. They depress more of your senses, more of your awareness. So sometimes too much perception can be too much, can be too much knowledge, can be too much information can be too much, and people want to quiet it down. And to be is not to force or to move in any kind of way. It's just to perceive as best you can. That's, that appeals to me, when you think of Alan Watts and Sam Harris. It's an appealing viewpoint. I would, it's worth the practice. I believe that's what meditation are these small moments of not trying to tune everything out, but just allowing yourself to take everything in and not deal with that reoccurring thought process. Because if you sit with your thoughts long enough, you get tired of them. And you're just like, why do I keep saying the same thing to myself all the time? And that's what that silence and perception does. So, I think it's, meditation and trying to not perceive is it's appealing to me sometimes. I've never been good at meditation, though. I don't know. Have either of you guys?
I've only done it a couple times. I've never been really good at it. And I want to come back at you with a thought here, because you had mentioned Sam Harris saying that we don't have free will because you can't really control your next thought.
Yeah.
But this is where free will comes into my mind, is that I can choose to figure out how to do that, which is what I think meditation gives you, which is what I think a lot of the Buddhist monks spend their whole life trying to achieve, right? And enlightenment, which is where it's not so much control, you just kind of allow. And similar to being on the jiu-jitsu mats, right? It's not about actively controlling everybody. It's about perceiving what's happening and then moving with the flow of the motion, right? And so I dig this because it is both accurate and inaccurate, right? Like, I can't control my thought right now because I haven't chosen to learn how to control my thoughts. I can't actively control someone else because I haven't chosen to learn how to control somebody else. Similar to the language that we were talking about earlier.
Jay Shetty has a book called Think Like a Monk. And in the book, he has an illustration, and I'm not going to do it justice, but it's a really, really good book. But he has like the mind as the cart. And then, he had the self as the cart. And then the mind was the horses pulling the cart. So So if you think about that illustration, like who's in control of the horses? The mind. But is the self in control of the mind? Because if it's not, where are those horses going to go? I thought it was a really good illustration. It's kind of fascinating, like if you think about it. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I dig it. That's awesome, man. Dan C jumped in here. He said, "Yeah, I've been stuck for the last 10 minutes trying not to think my next thought. Full OODA loop engaged. I love it." And then on the Instagram side, Katie Hirschfeld jumped in and said, "In Shakespeare's play Hamlet, Hamlet is asking, do I have the courage to do what I know I need to do, or should I chicken out and not revenge my father's killer? So for me, to be or not to be means, do I stand up and do what is right, or do I ignore the problem and turn my back?" And I like this idea of what is right, because I think we all have a version of what is right in our minds, of like what the next right thing to do is in this moment. And that version of what is right gets changed and shifted and molded by like our society, on our thoughts, on the people around us, on our environment, all these things. But if you seek to do what is right in this moment, just that, the seeking of that, the hunt for what is right, I think would turn into a pretty good life if you just sought to do what is right in the moment. Sean, you got any thoughts?
I do. So the comment that was just made about the hunt to do the right thing, that again goes back to the start of the podcast, which is this moment in Shakespeare's play has been interpreted so many ways across the world stage, from what was just mentioned to the complete polar opposite of what was just mentioned. It has literally been reinterpreted right across the spectrum. And so that is for the actor, and that is for the stage, and that is for the point that they're trying to make to the crowd that they're standing in front of at the time, which is like our lives to some degree. So again, that would be another fascinating little tangent for us to go down the stage of life. But Clay had asked about meditation, and I think it's worth. I'll throw in my 2 cents. Yes, I do meditate, Clay, and I do every day, and I do several times per day, and I do in several different ways. And I was influenced by a number of different meditators, to some degree, Sam Harris being one of them, Alan Watts being another, and many others. And the various forms of meditation that I use, you'll see it every day. On my Instagram account, when you see me slow motion or fast motion doing a spinning back kick on the heavy bag, that's me meditating. I put up a slow motion video just in my Instagram stories just the other day, and it was doing a side kick. And so as I stepped up to the heavy bag and started kicking it, I froze in time. And because I was doing 240 frames per second, I froze in this moment like this in front of the heavy bag for what appeared to be like 5, 6, 7 seconds in the slow motion video that I put up. But that was just that was a finger snap. It's because I'd slowed down time by 8. And so that little motion would have just been this wham wham straight to the bag. But when I'm on the heavy bag, I'm trying to be in the moment and not be the moment. And so I try to keep my mind very zen, very not empty dogmatically, but very open to the moment without overly fixating on an outcome. I look at the heavy bag and then I let the moment unfold, whatever that means to anyone who's listening. I don't try to dogmatically shape the moment the way that I idealized have in my mind. I try to be present with the energy that I am then working with interactively to create an outcome that visually I can see in my mind, but I'm open to other things. I'm open to it not being what I see in my mind. And so when I see it in my mind, then I simply disappear from the physical moment and I allow it to unfold. That to me is moving meditation. If I'm not moving on a heavy bag, then I'm doing it on my mountain bike. And if I'm not on my mountain bike, then I can do it standing on a rock one-legged. And if I'm not doing it in that fashion, I can do it while I'm picking tomatoes in my backyard. Or I can do it sitting in my chair, by my coffee chair, as I like to think of it, by the window with the sun on my left shoulder. And so meditation doesn't have to be sitting like a monk, cross-legged, wearing an orange robe and a certain hand incantation. As Clay, you already know that. But I think one of the reasons that people are held back from meditation, their own doing, they hold themselves back from meditating, is because it has been constructed as something that is Eastern or is foreign or is complicated or is a whole pile of things that I got to learn that I don't want to learn. But it isn't any of those things. Meditation is really quite a simple practice that has very few rules of thumb. And you can easily learn more about that by buying a book or going on the internet or attending a meditation camp. I've attended meditation from professionals to learn how to do it better. And so this is something you can teach yourself or be taught. Either way, it is definitely something worth pursuing.
Yeah, I always found it interesting that collectivistic cultures developed meditation and individualistic cultures don't like to sit with themselves. So it's like the collectivistic cultures, they're like, yeah, sit by yourself. Individualistic cultures are like, I ain't sitting with myself. I'm not doing that. That's too, it's kind of like interesting, right? It's kind of crazy if you look at it that way. But yeah, see, I'm glad you say that, because I thought maybe, when we go back to the horse and the cart reference, like my horses are so crazy that the only way I can even touch a little bit of meditation is in movement, because I haven't got to the point yet that I can sit, I don't think it's ADD or nothing like that. I just find it better. I actually lose my relationship with fitness the most when I forget that the reason why I love fitness is for exactly what you described, is because it helps me kind of be, you could call it singular focus, whatever, but I just find it the best in fitness. Like, some roles in jiu-jitsu, when people aren't trying to fight for their life, trying to beat me this one round, and they can just kind of flow and move and go. And running, when I get a certain level of fitness, is the other way that I just find meditation or moments of it. It's like, I don't know. And it could just be me, Sean, you can let me know, is I feel like I touch it for like a second or 2 seconds, or if I'm lucky, 20 seconds. And then the rest of the time is just me trying to find that 2 seconds again. And then I know I've lost it. I know I'm not going to find it again.
Well, I think you said the key word there, flow. And so, when you're in a BJJ role, we all know there's moments in that role where it's not that you disappear. You're there. You're aware of your awareness. But the rest, the details, they just kind of disappear. And the nonsense, it just disappears. The magic appears. You're in it, but you're not it. It just unfolds. I love the flow. When I'm in the flow on my bike or on my heavy bag or on the mats or making a coffee or freaking like a good chunk of my life, when I'm flowing in my life, it is meditation, in my opinion. And so I do believe that is the elusive chase, is to exist in the flow of time-space continuum, like to be the flow of time. I believe that is meditation to me. That's my definition anyway.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can do it, you've already said it. You already know how to do this infinitely now, Clay, because you've tasted flow. And once you taste flow, you've tasted the eternal meditative state. It's just that you have to now extend the flow of time while you're flowing. And so you know how to do that. We've all done it. We all started off in basic training only being able to do 2 push-ups. And then presto changeo, we built it out until we were rad master 9000s. And so that is life. I do believe you now know how to do it. It's just whether you actually want to pursue it or not. And that is the crux. Now that you know how to do it, we all know how to do it. It's whether you want it bad enough, whether you actually want to experience it to see if it is what you think it is. That takes a bit of time, but man, it is so worth it.
Yeah, I'm a lot like Chance in it's my inclination to feel like with running, for instance, it's really hard for me to get back on that horse the way that I was. Is my mindset towards it is I'm sacrificing, in the negative connotation, time at home. And you're gonna hate me, Sean, because I know how you feel about David Goggins, but I think that you can achieve flow if like we go into that tier one mindset when we talk about it. To me, that tier one mindset, that David Goggins kind of mindset, is I'm not going to think I'm sacrificing anything to go do the thing I know that I'm supposed to do. I'm just going to go. And life can be that flow. I haven't achieved it yet. I'm jealous of the people that have, but I think it's achievable. I think that I can find moments of life if I just listened to myself more and thought less sometimes, that I could achieve a little bit more flow in my life. I don't know if you feel that, Chance.
I feel you. And not only that, I got to get you near some horses. I got to get you started. I'll get you cleaned up and sorted out. But this is what equine therapy does for me, is that it allows you to find that presence. It allows you to find that moment. And you said you used the example earlier. You have your horses in front of you and they're leading this cart and they're crazy. They're wild all over the place. Well, guess what? Why are horses crazy and wild all over the place? Is because the energy in the area is wild and all over the place. And so when you can take the time to actively work yourself to be calm, the horses around you are going to be calm. When you start doing equine therapy, most people, when they first engage, their brain is everywhere and in all places. I mean, you have a 1,600-pound animal in front of you that could run you down in a heartbeat, and you have to stay calm next to it and then ask it to do things calmly. And you have to be able to process what's happening calmly. And you have to be able to not fall back into the emotional states that we fall back into, right? And heightened sense of awareness and constant vigilance and all these things that keep our stress levels high. We have to be able to let those go so that the animal can calm down, because the animal is looking at you as part of the herd. They're looking at you like, why is this predator who's next to me freaking out? It's like, there's obviously something wrong in the room, right? Like, and they're going to start bouncing around. They're going to start freaking out with you. But if you can relax into the moment and find that meditative flow state emotionally, then the horses will calm down, and you'll see it immediately. They'll go from being amped up and bouncing around all over the place, and then you will take a breath and they will calm down instantly, just as being part of the herd, as a social construct. And to the meditative state, running, same deal, man. There's lots of times where I've been running and then I've all of a sudden realized, oh, right, I'm running. And then you're like, oh, my lungs and all my legs. But there's like half second, 2 second, 3 seconds where you're like, everything's cool and everything's calm. You can just feel the breeze and you're just moving through space. It's a great feeling. Sean, what do you got?
Couple of things. One is what Clay was talking about with David Goggins. One thing that I'm not a big fan of in respect to Goggins is how much yelling and swearing he does. That's just his shtick. That's it. That's his thing. And you know what? There was a time in my life when I was like that. I used to swear a lot, and I had no problems with barking at someone. And so, if I would have had to podcast 20 years ago, I'd have probably been doing it like Goggins. So the reason that I just wish you would clean that up just a touch is so that he could be more readily available to others. Like he could reach a broader demographic. It would be less offensive to people who find swearing offensive. That's my only thing about Goggins, if he could just dial it down a little bit. But I want to play with that because it is interesting as to what Chance just said. Goggins, the way Goggins plays Goggins right now, would not work well for equine therapy. Because like if he landed in that paddock surrounded by horses, that would be a freaking gong show. Because he'd be chirpy McChirpin at 120 decibels, all the swear words, and the horses would be stampeding him. And so now, here we are. We've got Goggins, who's trying to live his big, best life in his state of flow, we'll call it. But that flow ain't going to work for equine therapy. And here's the point in the podcast where I want to make a super important distinction. Like it's a really important point. Don't ever think that there's the one thing that works for everyone. That's why there's so many things for you to engage in and see if it works for you. Just because Chance says equine therapy is the bomb, is the good stuff, is the secret sauce, is the juice, everyone needs to do it. That is not true. It's not true for anything for anyone. So, equine therapy, maybe not so good for Goggins. Running down a road with a megaphone, good for Goggins. And so, Goggins running down that road is good for a bunch of people, by the way. And the person who goes and does equine therapy and has success with that is also good for a bunch of people, by the way. It's just that one is way louder than the other.
Yeah, I feel like David Goggins just talks to himself like that. I think that's just how he talks to himself. You know, from a counselor's background, when you read his book, man, he had a pretty traumatic childhood. He probably talks to himself like that. I will say though, I bet if you gave David Goggins a joint, he'd be all right. I bet he'd be pretty calm. He'd probably be the calmest guy in the room. He's just chilling out, not running.
I'd love to see it.
I know, right?
I don't know if it's his jam or not. I you know what? Honestly, I don't think I've ever. Maybe he's talked about it. Maybe he's written about it. Maybe he's. I don't know, but I've never seen it, and I would love to know if he's down with the herb.
Yeah. David Goggins and Snoop Dogg. It's the collab.
Bam.
The collab we didn't know we needed.
So I want to play with what you just said there, Sean, and then I think we might have to do some final thoughts because we're running close on time. Quick comment though, Katie Hirschfeld jumped in here and said, I agree, Chance. For me, when I'm around my horse, I have to be centered, calmness in my energy, otherwise things go radically bad, and that's absolutely the truth. When I started doing equine therapy, I did it with Arabian horses. And Arabians are known to be flighty and hard to handle and hard to manage. And really what it comes down to is that they are that much more sensitive than other horses. So whatever you're going through, they're going to pick up on that much faster. And you have to just be more calm around them, and then they're fine. Then they work beautifully. They're beautiful horses to work with. But to that point, David Goggins stepping in with the horses, you're right, the horses would be everywhere. And more than likely, he would then try to ramp up his David Gogginsness to get the horses to fall in line. And I watched a video of him. It's a pretty famous video, you know, where he's lifting weights and he's like, who's going to lift the boats? Who's going to carry the logs and the boats and all the things, right? I heard from a video of the guy who was there filming that, and it was like, David just out of nowhere started doing that. Like he was starting to falter in the workout. It was starting to get hard for him. He was starting to have challenges and like not quite completing the reps, and then just fell into that mode of just like, who's going to carry the boats? And he was able to push himself through. So Clay, I think you're right. That's kind of like in his mind. That's how he talks to himself, how he gets through those moments of, oh no, I'm going to fail, or oh no, this isn't going to work, or I'm faltering. I need to bolster. I need to fortify, versus a lot of things, especially in jiu-jitsu, especially with horses, it's more about releasing, like just stepping back, taking things off the plate. Oh, well, I don't need that right now. I don't need this right now. I don't need that. And it becomes much more of a meditative state, something that we can seek rather than fight against. That makes sense. Clay, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, actually, it caught me off guard when I was in Afghanistan. I actually lifted weights with a guy, and he, you know, it's small little area, but a lot of people in there because what else do we have to do other than mission, whatever. But he would just cuss himself out, man, like bad. He would say stuff to himself that you're just like, ugh, I don't know. this is a little uncomfortable. But yeah, I think there are people that when they start to falter a little bit, they just kind of that NLP, they're just a disclaimer on the NLP too. I don't want people to go look at that as like a tool to manipulate people or anything. I was just kind of making the point that there are people that study how that internal narrative does it have real world outcomes, and they put a name on it, right? So science does study it as well, and it does matter. How you talk to yourself. We all know that. Sometimes I just don't think that we pay attention enough. So if you put a scientific name on it, people will be like, oh, maybe I should talk to myself different. But it is a good tool. I think David Goggins has definitely been through a lot of trauma and probably talks to himself that way. But you got to wonder at a certain point, with as many miles as he puts in and as much as he's yelling, that when he's alone by himself, if he's just not at peace. I would imagine he's got to have some peace in there. I don't know. I just, again, kind of like a thought experiment that I'd be curious what he's like just normally.
I would wonder that too. And I think this is true for kind of everybody. This is the trouble with social media, is that you're going to see a portion. You're going to, I think it was, somebody said it earlier that like, you got to remember you're a billionth of the interactions of the world, right? Like whatever you put in the world is not, I can't change the world instantly right now. But what I can do is I can put my billionth of an effort into changing the world and work towards it. So I think for some people, I mean, he obviously has to be calm enough to be able to manage some of the long runs that he's done, like 250 milers and 500, like the super long ones. Sean, you'd probably be a great person to ask about this. I'm sure you've seen lots of athletes probably yelling at themselves or talking to themselves, trying to motivate themselves through an endurance race. Is that a pretty standard thing, or do you see most people just kind of quietly working through it?
Well, the thing about doing really long races like 24-hour mountain bike races or longer is eventually you're...
Which is crazy, by the way, Sean.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Guaranteed. One of the things about if you're going to yell at yourself for that long, eventually your throat gets really hoarse. So you've got to start figuring out different ways to do it, like maybe just keeping your voice inside. And that does happen. Because eventually you run out of things to think about, things to talk to yourself about. Eventually you start digging into the darkness. You start going down to level 27. And that's why these kind of things are good. And that's what I believe Goggins has gone through many times. And I believe that's what has formed up Goggins. That's why he's like sure of himself. That's why he is confident about understanding who he is. I'm not saying he likes who he is or dislikes who he is. What I am saying is he knows himself way better than most people know themselves. And that's what happens when you go do hard things for really long times. And then you do it again and again. I've done it 30 times, 24-hour solos. Each time you will end up like yelling at yourself internally in the dark at about 0 to 30 hours. That's just what happens. Because you'll do something dumb, or you'll have done something dumb. And like you don't give yourself a hallway pass when you're doing dumb stuff. Like you don't like look away from it. And so in 24 hours, a lot of things go wrong. And so there's a lot of internal dialogue. And all of that dialogue is actually quite formative. It helps you grow in these adverse moments. Here's something for you to think about if you're listening right now still to the podcast. We're talking about to be or not to be. Consider that as a future casting idea. It's literally you saying to yourself, you want to be something in the future, to be. Or you can kind of refine it maybe to almost the precise moment now. I'm trying to be something in this moment. But really, when you are quite pedantic about this, to be is future, I am is now. And so I am or I am not is what I'm thinking when I'm in the present. So if I was Goggins as the example, running down a highway yelling, in that moment, he is. He is not trying to be. He is. But I think one of the things that propels Goggins forward, like the moment that you're talking about, Chance, the workout where he's starting to fail a little bit maybe, and he was yelling about who's going to carry the boats. We've all seen the clip. I think that he was trying to be something that he's got in his mind. I am the Goggins, and therefore I will not let the Goggins down. That is trying to be his idealized version of his future self. I will not fail in this workout an hour from now. I just won't. I'm trying to be. But I think a lot of people don't have a really firm grasp of, I'm not going to surrender. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to turn away from the version of myself that I want to be 5 minutes from now, an hour from now, whatever the case is, through the workout, lifting all the boats. So I think Goggins really has a strong sense of who he is now and who he wants to be in the near future. What do you guys think?
I dig it. Clay, what do you think?
No, yeah, I think when you guys that do those kinds of events, it's always because part of me, again, not on that level at all, but part of me has kind of touched that darkness, with long runs and marathon, whatever. And I always wonder why do I still want to kind of seek it? What makes a person seek that level of internalizing at all? Because there's a part of me that still wants to do it. And for me personally, I have this feeling, I don't know where it comes from or why, that the only way I'm going to be comfortable in being is to be comfortable when I'm on my deathbed. And I just don't think that I'll be, or no, let me rephrase that. I feel like I'll be ready when that time comes if I've pushed myself that hard. I feel like that's the only way to prepare for death. Like, I don't know why I feel that way. I think the only way is to just push yourself into that level of self-realization. And I don't think you can get it any other way. That's why we got the bodies that we have to use in some senses to see how far you can take it to some degree. I'm not some crazy endurance racer, but I do have that feeling, and that feeling does move me towards staying active in some way.
If I can, what you're describing is how I would think of it as such. I'm just trying to discover the parts of me that I'm unaware of right now before I die.
Yeah.
I'm just seeking, man. I am seeking. I'm a seeker.
So you still got it too.
I cannot.
That motivates me though.
I couldn't sell it. I couldn't give it away. I couldn't buy any more. What I've got is more than enough.
It's hard to explain that, right? Isn't it?
It is hard. And it's only through conversations like this that it gets brought up. I often, in the past, we've talked about this idea of, I've literally put the Who's song, The Seeker, to a number of my videos to help people understand that I seek externally in the world, but I'm a way bigger seeker in my internal world. I do way more hunting and procreating in my inner world. The external world, for sure, I'm hunting, I'm seeking, but it pales in comparison to the level of deliberate hunting that I do in my internal world, in my meditative space, in the time that I have to myself. I am regularly hunting.
Chance, we gotta go get more miles, man. We're behind, bro. We gotta get back out there. I'm telling you.
I don't feel like I'm behind. I feel like I am right.
Okay,
you guys,
I'm speaking for myself.
You're ahead. You're ahead of the game, and here's why. Because look at you guys. At your age, I wasn't having these kind of conversations. I couldn't have these kind of conversations with people. First of all, that was like 20 odd years ago, and this sort of format didn't exist. Plus 20 odd years ago, it sure as hell wasn't cool to have these kind of conversations it would have been almost frowned upon to some degree. Well, here we are having conversations that I wish I could have had 20 years ago. You guys are, and I am, having them now. And you are like literally ahead of the power curve as far as I'm concerned. I mean, just so long as you keep pursuing, when you hit my age, you'll be like, it'll be redonkulous how much better off you are than I am, that's for sure.
Hope so.
I was thinking about this with my boys because I have these styles of conversations with them, and they're 12 and 8. Like they're not deep into these thoughts, but I ask them the same questions. So like, what does it mean? What does it mean to be? What does it mean to do these things you want to do, et cetera, et cetera? And I think we're setting them up for success as well. But I wanted to point something out. Clay, you had mentioned why do we do these things? Why do we seek to go after this? And I think what it is, I think we brush up against these feelings of like, would I be able to do that? Could I? You see somebody else do something, or you see a possibility out in the world that just kind of brushes your shoulder, and you're like, what is that? And then from that image, this is where the to be or not to be comes in. I think a lot of people in the world get that little feeling, that little shiver up their spine, that little, what was that thing happening? And they turn away from it. Like, nope, I don't want to deal with it. Whereas I think the three of us, we look at it and we're like, well, what is that? Where does that take? Where does that road go? And then it leads down a trail, and then something else will brush the other side of our shoulders and be like, whoa, what was that? And then we'll dive into that one. And that seeking of the experience of the world, right? This is life. We want to experience the things that we want to experience, and then we also have to experience the things that we don't really want to experience as well. I think that's part of it, at least in my mind. Now, we are almost at 2 hours, and I want to just say thank you, Clay, Sean. This has been an awesome conversation. I don't really have any timestamps because I've been so involved in the conversation. I'm going to have to go back and actually re-watch this to make sure I get the right clips out. But I wanted to do one thing before I get final thoughts. I'm going to read the soliloquy here, the little bit of the speech from Hamlet, and then I want to get your guys' final thoughts on everything that we've talked about. So here it goes. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation, devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep. To sleep, perchance, to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, I don't know how to say that word, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office and the spurns, the patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin. Who would fardels bear, to grunt and sweat under a weary life, and that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience doth make cowards of us all. Thus consciousness doth make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sickled o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment, with the regard that their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. Let's get some final thoughts. Clay?
Yeah, well, I mean, what better? How much more poetic could a human being describe living with nobility in spite of your pending mortal doom? I mean, that, I have nothing to say after that. It's so dense. Yeah.
I love it. Sean, what do you got?
Could you just read a little bit more Shakespeare?
I could. I got lots more.
I love Shakespeare.
Me too.
That's a lot. That was a lifetime's worth of analysis that you just read out. The thing that stood out for me as you were reading it, as Shakespeare discussed the consciousness versus unconsciousness of life, or the dreaming or the not dreaming. The thing that popped into my head, no joke, is this: I'm freaking living the life, baby. I'm living the dream. Living the dream. Some of my local residents here in Roslyn every once in a while say, "Hey, how's things going?" And invariably, I'll look at them in the eye and say, "Living the dream, baby." I love that little phrase. It means so many things. And I wonder if Shakespeare thought about how many things that can mean when we talk about living the dream.
I think Shakespeare might have, indeed. And, I got nothing to add. This is the beauty of this question, to be or not to be, in my mind, goes back to what we say at the end of every other show, which is learn, build, grow. We'll see y'all next week. Chimo.
Chimo.
Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.